there's a lady that come up that door, and some guy jumped into a red light with her car, with her 2 kids in it, and he took off, and she got out of the car here at our house.
And he's got the kids?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much, and your daddy, these whole families love you so much. I just feel in my heart that you're okay.
Ultimately, when she was confronted with the lies that were coming, it was untenable for her to continue her story after they were, calling her out on one after the other.
I found out, that what had happened to him like the rest of the world found out.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder.
She was looking to change her life, and the children were an encumbrance.
This was the biggest thing since OJ. For folks today, it would be like our Murdaugh case.
30 years is not near enough for what she did.
We've got a 30-year-old case making headlines again. Susan Smith is up for parole. I'm Anne Emerson, and in my 30 years of covering crime in courts, I've seen a lot of things, like Alec Murdaugh, the red-headed attorney convicted of murdering his son and his wife in part because his own dog gave him away. Or the mistrial of a man accused of killing his gorgeous wife after it was initially ruled a suicide. They said she hung herself with a garden hose. Listen, y'all, I'm a mom of 2 kids. I'm going to be able to spot a lie a mile away. And I use those motherly instincts as soon as I get the call about covering a suspicious death. I want to take you on the road to discovery with me as I question things others might not even consider. It's October 25th, 1994. Susan Smith hopped into her little red Mazda, headed to her friend's house down Highway 49 in Union, South Carolina. Now, it was fall in South Carolina, and it isn't that cold by northern standards, but this evening it was cool enough for a sweatshirt. Her boys were strapped in their car seats in the back seat, and it was about 9 o'clock at night, bedtime. You think about it, and Michael and Alex were probably fighting to stay awake. Maybe a little whiny, rubbing their eyes, and then nodding off in their car seats. She'd been seeing a very handsome man in town after separating from her husband, but they recently broke up. He didn't want kids. It was at the red light at Monarch Mills that things took a dark turn. As she described it to police, she was carjacked by a black man in a knit cap. She said he had a gun stuck in her side and told her to shut up and drive. And then he took the car and her kids. Now, she ran to a nearby home for help, and for more than a week, everyone searched for Michael and Alex. Susan begged for her kids. She did interview after interview, but it was all a lie. A terrible, horrible lie. And nearly everyone seemed to fall for it, including her ex-husband. But each time she told her story, there was something new or different. It didn't match up. Reporters didn't know it, but they were actually helping investigators. They watched and listened closely to every single interview, every word, looking at her facial expressions, how she used her hands, where she was looking, and if she was crying.
Since day one, I've known everything, everywhere, every time they've gone somewhere, I knew where they were, and for one time, there's absolutely nothing I can do.
And then there was that traffic light at Monarch Mills.
It was, the red light where she said the supposed carjacking took place. It was a pressure or a trip sensor where you had to have another vehicle pull up to that red light in order to make the light that she was saying was red turn red. And that put some holes into her story. And
I think that played a major part in it with the way that red light is triggered. If a car pulls up, then it'll stop the traffic on 49. That was one hole that they could shoot in the story, I believe. That's just my belief.
Is that intersection the same today?
It's still the same. Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to the suspect now. A black man. You gotta see this sketch. No real identifying features. Pretty generic, don't you think? This really caused a lot of problems. Remember, it's Union, South Carolina. It's 1994. About 9,000 people lived there, and about half of them were white and half of them were black. Current Mayor Harold Thompson was a TV news photographer back then. Listen to him describe this witch hunt.
What really struck me when they said that she had said a black man had taken her kids, and next thing you know, police were going to houses late at night, early in the morning, or whenever, because the description that she gave could have fit a lot of people. And I knew a guy, one of the guys that the description, they kind of got him up and out of the bed or what have you, and because he fit the description, but it wasn't him. And I don't think any black guy would have taken the kids like she said they did.
She accused, a black guy of abducting her children, or carjacking her car and abducting her children. And when they found out that all that was a lie, there was a racial divide. It hurt. I mean, it hurt.
People there are bad, but all blacks are not bad.
Investigators confronted her with all of this, and 8 days later, the deceit was over. She'd been caught in her lies, and she had nothing else to do but say a prayer and confess. It turns out that she had rolled her red Mazda into John D. Long Lake with her kids strapped inside. It took 6 minutes for the car to go under. I mean, how could she do this to these two little guys that were so precious? As a mother myself, it's unthinkable. But why? Prosecutors believe it was to get her man back. In fact, her wedding album was in the car, as if she was trying to drown the memories of her previous life so she could have a new one. It was so horrific. The prosecutor was seeking the death penalty. Susan Smith went to trial the next summer. It was the same time as the O.J. Simpson case, but unlike LA, in Union, South Carolina, the judge ruled no cameras in the courtroom. Keep in mind, there were no computers, no social media. People gathered each day outside the courthouse to get the latest information about what had happened that day. But for the rest of us, if you wanted to watch any live coverage, you needed to turn on the 6 p.m. news.
This is a News 13 WLOS special report, The State versus Susan Smith.
The trial lasted 3 days. She'd already confessed, but defense attorneys were trying to save her life. They argued that she was a victim of her own mental health, and even brought in her stepfather, who took part of the blame.
I think a lot of people felt sorry for Susan Smith after Beverly Russell testified. He told jurors that he molested Susan Smith when she was 15 years old and kept an affair going with her up until just a couple of months before she drowned her 2 sons. And I think that a lot of people felt sorry for her. He also said that he wanted to take some of the blame for this because he took advantage of his fatherly relationship with Susan Smith.
They said she was suicidal when she drowned her kids, but there was no evidence that she tried to save them. There were no bruises or scrapes or cuts. Her clothes weren't wet. The jury came back with a verdict in 2.5 hours. They convicted her on both the murders.
We, the jury, in the Doug Powell case, decided that Susan Smith be in prison in the state penitentiary for the balance of her natural life. I knew it. I knew it.
Ms. Smith, the jury having found you guilty and the verdicts having been published, is there any matter that you would like to address? Anything that you would like to say before I impose sentence?
No, Your Honor.
They sentenced her to life in prison. And now, 30 years, almost to the date Michael and Alex died, she's eligible for parole. How? Why? I mean, she was sentenced to life. Didn't life mean life? We didn't know how this could happen, so we asked the former prosecutor about it.
Unfortunately, back then, not only did life not mean life, you could not tell the jury that, because as I recall, 30 years ago, they came back with questions of would she be eligible for parole, and the law at that time required the judge to basically say you as a juror to take life in its plain and usual meaning. You know, life and death mean life and death. And that way it keeps the jurors arguably from diving down into forms of execution, you know, all the things, will it be carried out, will it not? In other words, it tries to save the jury from speculating. But I can remember after the case, some jurors saying they really believed that her, you know, having to be in jail the rest of her life, thinking about what she did to kids and being remorseful basically would be the greatest punishment.
You heard him. The jury never got an explanation of what a life sentence meant. In South Carolina in 1995, it was up to their own personal interpretation. 30 years is up now, and she's eligible for parole. She killed her 2 babies, and at 53 years old, if she gets out, she could now live longer than she spent in prison. It's mind-boggling. But just think what it could mean for David Smith, the father of those 2 little boys. He told us when the boys went missing, he believed her 100%, even after she failed several lie detector tests. He told her just to relax, to pass them. He figured she was just stressed. David Smith hasn't seen her or spoken to her since right after she was arrested. In fact, she says Susan's name is not spoken in the house, only Michael and Alex. David's gonna be at that parole hearing, and it's gonna be excruciating. Listen to what he told us.
It scares me because I don't want to see her. It makes me nervous and just dreading the whole possibility of seeing her again. I'm dreading all of it. I'm terrified that she could possibly get out. A lot of family, a lot of friends say it won't happen, especially not the first time, and I think that too, but it's still a possibility. It still could happen. I just want them to know that letting her out, that would be a grave injustice to Michael and Alex. That she doesn't deserve to be free ever again. It just would be an injustice to those 2 little boys.
I wanted to know what a parole board hearing for Susan Smith would look like. I talked with the Department of Corrections, and it's going to be held at parole board headquarters. It will be virtual, but cameras will be allowed inside, and I'm going to be there. But for more inside information, I went to our exclusive legal analyst, Charlie Condon, who just so happened to be the Attorney General of South Carolina during that trial. I mean, that's the state's top cop.
I was privy to all sorts of, one would call inside information at the time that, of course, I wouldn't disclose. And as it went through, you just really couldn't believe what had happened. You didn't feel confident in the proof, but you knew this case was going to be proven. So really the only issue was going to be what the punishment would be, whether it would be the death penalty or life in prison, which again, we now understand that to be not true life. At the time, it was a 30-year parole eligibility.
We've got this parole hearing coming up on Wednesday next week. Do you know who's allowed to testify and who's allowed to be there at this parole hearing?
They hear first from the would-be parolee and his or her attorney. And then anyone that they want to have give evidence. It's not like a court trial. There's not rules of evidence. You just simply present information. And after that occurs, it then swings to the surviving victims, which in this case I'm assuming that perhaps the husband, the then husband would testify. I will say this though, looking at the members of the parole board, I think it's worthy of being noted that they're all appointed with the advice and consent of the Senate, but they're appointed by the governor. So all the parole board members would have been appointed by Governor McMaster, who is he's really a law and order governor. So my expectation is they would be not easy votes to get for someone getting parole. You've got somebody that has done really poorly in prison, that committed the worst crime imaginable, and there's going to be serious opposition from those in the know. And so I see the parole board voting unanimously to keep her in for another 2 years. She's not following prison rules, so who would expect her to follow rules if she were to be released? So I think the case against her release is very strong.
So where do people stand on this? Let's just think about it. She didn't just kill 2 little boys. She preyed on people's sympathies. She wasted taxpayer money by lying about the kidnapping for more than a week. And then she blamed it on a black man, which just perpetuated racist attitudes in the South. She's had repeated infractions in prison. She got caught with marijuana, trying to get a cell phone. I mean, those things are banned alone by the Department of Corrections. She also got caught having sex with not 1, but 2 guards. And just this year, in a recorded phone conversation, she was overheard trying to strike a deal with a filmmaker, willing to give up phone numbers for family members, victims, witnesses, even her ex-husband, possibly a way to get money. DOC shut that down and charged her. Since late summer, 300 people have written letters to the parole board urging them to deny her release. And it may even be more now since we last checked. We don't know exactly what those letters say. I asked the Department of Corrections and they're not going to release the contents of those letters. But surely there's strong opinions if these people put pen to paper, looked up the address, bought a stamp, and put that letter in a mailbox. That's a lot of people with an opinion. We asked the current prosecutor about Susan getting out, and he did not hold back.
She's attempted to get cell phones. She's, I think, sort of takes advantage of the fact that she's a famous criminal to lure men into relationships in the hopes that they give her money. I think that she is the same person she was in October of 1994. I don't think she's changed that much at all. I don't think that that kind of person can change. Whatever is broken inside of a human being that allows them to drive their car with 2 children in the backseat into a lake and then come up with this horrible lie accusing some, non-existent black man of having taken them, and then participating in a multi-day charade where the whole country is looking for this black man in a toboggan. Whatever was broken that allowed her to do that is something I think that can't be fixed by incarceration. I think it's just, she just needs to remain where she's at.
And we know the former prosecutor has no sympathy.
She hadn't jumped over the fence or escaped or assaulted a guard. I think as you see her behavior over the years, it's reflective of who she is, who she was. And Susan comes first. I mean, whether it's and she's always kind of used her sexuality to get what she wanted. And she is always looking out for what's best for Susan, and I don't think that's changed while she's been in prison.
According to the dictionary, parole is defined as the release of a prisoner temporarily or permanently before the completion of a sentence on the promise of good behavior. Does Susan have any redeeming qualities? Well, according to a letter to the state newspaper 10 years ago, she said, "I'm not the monster society thinks I am. I'm far from it. I was a good mother and I loved my boys." She's earned 3 certificates while in prison, 1 for gardening and another for janitorial work. And she's done on-the-job training, she's held a number of jobs, and even worked as a ward keeper assistant. And there are 2 people who wrote the prison who support granting parole. Again, we don't know who they are or what they might say. I mean, it could be a family member, a pen pal. We know she had several. Or maybe one of the so-called sugar daddies that she had. Now, we did the math for you. It cost more than $600,000 to keep Susan Smith in prison for 30 years. And right now it costs about $40,000 a year. And that's more than the average yearly cost of tuition for a public college. Susan Smith's father died by suicide when she was a child. And she was also repeatedly sexually abused by her stepfather for years. Both terrible and traumatic. Still, no excuse to kill your own children and lie about it. Should she stay locked up or get out? I mean, we're going to find out at her parole hearing on November 20th. I'm Anne Emerson. Tell me what you think.